Okay. Good morning. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're just going to let a few more people arrive, and we're waiting on Rear Admiral Giverson to get here, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2017 CMS Veterans Day Observance Program. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dan Hood. I'm the chairman of the CMS Veterans Assistance Committee. We're pleased to have the Deputy Undersecretary for Economic Opportunity from the Veterans Benefit Administration and Division of U.S. Veterans Administration here to speak today. Just one quick operational note. During the presentation, we're going to show a short video here. We'll cut to it. It's about a 5-minute video. And those of you who are watching on YouTube will have to refer to the link that I sent out a little bit earlier. And after the video, the program will continue and we'll pick right back up where we left off. On behalf of the CMS Veterans Assistance Committee, we'd like to wish all of our veterans and their families a very happy and safe Veterans Day. I'm going to go ahead and make a few formal introduction notes here on the Undersecretary. He's on his way? Okay. Actually, Rear Admiral Giverson is going to have the honor of introducing our speaker, and he's on his way up here right now. And Thank you, sir. And I will turn this over to Rear Admiral Giverson. Perfect time. Not late.
How you doing?
Not late, right on time.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry, another meeting. You know how that goes. So happy Veterans Day a day earlier, But glad to be here. I have the privilege of introducing our speaker for today, and great opportunity for us to meet him, talk to him, listen to him. He has a vast wealth of experience, and you'll see from the bio here that I had to shorten a little bit, sir. I apologize for that, but quite a resume. Deputy Undersecretary Curtis Coy was appointed to be the first Deputy Undersecretary for Economic Opportunity in the Veterans Benefits Administration, Department of Veterans Affairs, on May 9, 2011. In this role, Mr. Coy oversees all education benefits, GI Bill, vocational rehabilitation, and employment for wounded warriors and disabled veterans, loan guarantee service, veterans transition and employment programs, and VBA collaboration with the DoD. These programs work collectively to assist veterans in achieving personal and economic success. Prior to this appointment, Mr. Coy was a senior executive at the Department of Health and Human Services for nearly 11 years. I have to check those dates because I was over there with you, so it's good to see you. For 8 of those years, he was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Administration at the Administration for Children and Families, ACF. In this role, Mr. Coy was responsible for exerting corporate leadership to ensure the success of the business aspects for the ACF mission. 70 national social service programs with a total budget of about $47 billion in grants. For almost 7 years, Mr. Coy worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers as a senior managing consultant. Also, Mr. Coy served in the Navy proudly for 24 years as a Surface Warfare and Supply Corps officer. He subsequently accepted an appointment at the U.S. Naval Academy, graduating with the class of 1975. He's the recipient of many distinguished awards: the Western Area Veteran Education Specialist, Bill Pearson Outstanding Lifetime Achievement Award, the National Association of State Approving Agencies Lifetime Leadership Award, the Presidential Rank Award, my very own Surgeon General of the United States Medallion, HHS Secretary's Distinguished Service Award, and many others. Mr. Coy earned 2 master's degrees from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. A strong believer in higher education, Mr. Coy served as an adjunct associate professor for the University of Maryland, University College, Graduate School of Management and Technology, as well as 2 community colleges. He has been selected for the International Who's Who of Professionals, Who's Who in America, and Who's Who Historical Society. However, as we all would love to hear, his greatest source of pride is being the father and grandfather and a devoted husband of Denise. It is my distinct pleasure today to introduce Deputy Undersecretary Mr. Curtis Coy.
Thanks for that nice introduction. Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me? I'll put this down for a minute. I'm going to make a couple quick excuses. I had eye surgery a couple weeks ago, so I may pull my glasses out or I may not. So we'll kind of go from there. But first, I want to thank Admiral Giverson for that really kind and actually far too lengthy introduction. It's an introduction that only a mother would appreciate, and it also makes me think that I'm much older than I am. Well, maybe I am that old once you have heard all the stuff that's in there. But I want to thank you all for joining us. I am here today to address a day dedicated to veterans, to remember those men and women who made possible our way of life, our freedoms, and the rights, privileges, and responsibilities we enjoy as Americans. I'll ask this audience and our audience out in cyberspace if you could just raise your hand of how many folks are veterans in the audience. Thank you. Keep them up. How many folks in the audience have a relative who is a veteran or currently serving? So I hope you all will appreciate the remarks I'm about to give. In countless ceremonies like this, we've asked American citizens to pause and honor veterans. For more than 241 years of independence, these patriots stood watch over our liberty. From Bunker Hill to the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, we are all the beneficiaries of their vigilance and determination to uphold the democratic beliefs which are the foundation of our nation. America has been blessed as no other country in the history of the world. The sacrifices of our armed forces have given us the security and freedom in which to grow and flourish as a nation. In laws, human rights, economics, science and technology, business and the arts. We honor them because it was on November 11th, at the 11th hour of the 11th month of 1918, that the guns of World War I fell silent across Europe. America's doughboys started coming home, and we began to support our returning veterans. As many of you just heard, this is sort of my homecoming to CMS. It wasn't that long ago I was working in the Office of Acquisitions, being awe-inspired by the length, breadth, and magnitude of what CMS does every single day. What both our agencies have in common is everything continues to change, some through Congress, some through administrations, and some through our own internal leadership. This is my 5th transition, more if you count secretarial transitions. I think, regardless of politics, everyone would agree that our veterans are our priority to our nation. It is our nation's mission to fulfill Lincoln's promise, to care for him who have borne the battle and for his widow and his orphans. In what are many calling the most divisive political environments in recent memory, the one thing that everyone agrees upon is the well-being and care of our veterans. The unanimous appointment of Secretary Shulkin as head of the VA speaks volumes. Congress, the media, the American people have seen the course VA is plotting and are in support of our direction and goals. Make no mistake, though, we still have our challenges, and we're addressing them head-on with transparency, transformation, and accountability. First, I'd like to do a little VA 101 to give you all a perspective. VA has an estimated workforce of over 370,000 people. It is the second largest agency in the United States government, only to Department of Defense. And it operates in 3 functional areas. The Veterans Health Administration has over 300,000 employees that provide veteran medical, surgical, and quality of life services. It is a network of 152 hospitals and over 800 clinics across the country. It is the world's largest healthcare system and provides training for a majority of America's medical and nursing and others. What many people don't know is that roughly 60% of all medical residents obtain a portion of their training at VA hospitals and clinics. New programs provide treatment for traumatic brain injuries, post-traumatic stress, suicide prevention, women veterans, and much, much more. VA has opened outpatient clinics and established telehealth and other services to accommodate a diverse and changing veteran population. Secretary Shulkin, a physician himself, has established several goals related to VA healthcare and is working towards them as we speak. VA has made considerable efforts in expanding the availability of VA Choice program and a number of providers for that program. Essentially, the Choice Act allows for veterans to seek medical help if they cannot get a timely appointment or are too far away to commute. The first quarter of 2017 saw an authorization increase of over 35% compared to the year before. Time and time again, Secretary Shulkin has voiced his opinion on not privatizing VA. As a physician, the Secretary has diagnosed that building a stronger VA starts with a robust community care program. Building a stronger VA begins with building strong relationships with community care partners, veterans, service organizations, and federal partners like all of you in this room. Building a better care coalition is not just important to the Secretary, but important to every employee at the VA. We recently unveiled a new VA slogan that we find simple yet elegant. We ask our veterans not simply to go to VA facilities, we are asking them to choose VA. Veterans have plenty of options when it comes to health care, and we want to make the VA health care their system of choice. Choose VA means that we will have the culture, medical skills, technologies, and employees that make VA the veteran health care of choice. As important as it is for our veterans to choose VA health care, we also believe that it's important that veterans and their families choose VA for their end-of-life care. In the United States, you may not know that there are 147 cemeteries. VA is responsible for 131 of them. The Army has 2, one of which is Arlington, and 14 are maintained by the Department of Interior. More than 3.5 million people, including veterans of every war and conflict, from the Revolutionary War to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, are honored by burial in VA's national cemeteries. Today, there are more than 22 million living veterans who have earned the honor of a burial in a national cemetery, including more than 350 Medal of Honor recipients buried in VA's national cemeteries. More than 21,400 acres of land are devoted to the memorialization of those who have served this country. VA recently created a program that would allow for veterans to pre-qualify for burial benefits. The pre-need for burial application allows for VA to make an eligibility determination before a veteran passes away. This vital piece of information allows for veterans and their families to plan appropriately for end-of-life care. No longer does a grieving widow and family have to scramble to qualify for burial benefits. The services that NCA provide can't take away the grief of losing a loved one, but can help pay testament to the brave individuals they care for. The third branch of the VA, TREE, is responsible for providing benefits to service members, veterans, and their families. The Veterans Benefits Administration is tasked with the mission of administering benefit programs, vital to the educational and economic well-being of service members, veterans, and their families. Secretary Shulkin just gave a speech at the National Press Club just 2 days ago. He recognized that we are all too often too bureaucratic. We agree, and we're working that. Let's take a brief glance at how VBA provides these benefits. Compensation Service oversees the delivery of disability compensation, a tax-free monetary benefit paid to veterans with disabilities that are a result of a disease or injury incurred or aggravated during military service. Last year alone, we processed over 1.3 million claims for our veterans. Pension and Fiduciary Services provides program oversight that helps wartime veterans, their families, and survivors with financial challenges by providing them supplemental income. It protects the benefits paid to our most vulnerable beneficiaries who, because of disease, injury, infirmities of advanced age, are unable to manage their VA benefits. We do it for them. The Insurance Service maintains life insurance programs that give financial security and peace of mind for service members, veterans, and their families. I asked you to raise all your hands because any of you who have been in the service might be surprised that your SGLI, Servicemen's Group Life Insurance, is managed by the VA. In fact, if VA were a commercial insurance business, it would be the world's largest. In my role as Deputy Undersecretary for Economic Opportunity, my team and I are tasked with playing two missions in the veteran landscape. The first involves the management and delivery of economic driving programs that are the GI Bill, vocational rehabilitation and employment for wounded warriors and disabled veterans, and the Home Loan Guarantee Program. The second is to identify, develop, and implement initiatives to fuel economic well-being. The first OEO benefit program I want to talk about is our Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Program, or VRE. VRE is dedicated to serving veterans with service-connected disabilities as well as qualifying family members. Right now, about 135,000 of them are given or provided case management, individual case management by our VRE service. VA has nearly 1,000 vocational rehabilitation counselors across nearly 400 locations. These trained counselors work with program participants to develop and implement training programs to obtain suitable and gainful employment. VA is creating new avenues to meet the needs of veterans and their families, regardless of where they are. The Veterans Success on Campus program, or VSOC, is a VA program that places an experienced vocational rehabilitation counselor at a university. These highly trained counselors interact with veterans attending classes at over 90 universities or colleges. VSOC allows for VA to serve individuals in a school setting and supports the journey towards achieving higher educational goals. I'd like to play a short clip that brings the GI Bill into sharp focus. If they could play that clip, please.
It's been credited
Parts of it are disturbing, and parts of it are heartwarming. But I think it's important for all of us, and another reason why I asked you to raise your hands, the GI Bill has made an impact on so many Americans. Think of the generational impact the GI Bill made on Mr. Boone. Pretty powerful story, and I think it brings home the point of the power of the GI Bill. It helps our veterans and their families get the education needed to reach personal and financial goals through our current post-9/11 GI Bill. Since its inception of the post-9/11 GI Bill, you may have heard, the program has provided $79 billion in benefits to over 1.8 million beneficiaries. More folks than ever are using their education benefits and are earning degrees and certificates at an incredible pace. As impressive as the number of GI Bill users is, the success obtained by those using the GI Bill benefits is even more impressive. A recent partnership with the Student Veterans of America helped create a report that highlights the successes of our student veterans. It shouldn't be much of a surprise. Today's veterans are from the most highly trained military in the history of our country. They are older, they're more mature, many with families, some with jobs, and are all mission and goal-oriented. Would it surprise for you to know that veterans have a 72% success rate in college, meaning 54% complete their course of study, 18% are still persisting, and 28% attrit, higher than their civilian counterparts? Would it surprise you to know that veteran students have an average GPA of 3.34 compared to a non-veteran student of 2.9? We've seen over 453,000 obtain degrees or certificates. That's the size of Raleigh, North Carolina. About 52 of those degrees are STEM degrees, or science, technology, engineering, and math degrees. Remember when I mentioned that we're at a time when we consider this perhaps the most divisive Congress we've seen in a long time? The recent Culinary Veterans Educational Assistance Act, often now called the Forever GI Bill, with 34 new laws pertaining to the GI Bill, was passed unanimously a couple of months ago. The legislation signed by the President is the most extensive mandate since the initial passing of the GI Bill. With the passing of the Forever GI Bill, several changes are in store for veterans and their families. A couple highlights include, instead of having 15 years to use your GI Bill, you now have access to those benefits over a lifetime, thus the lifetime GI Bill. A 5-year, $75 million high-technology pilot program that provides veterans the opportunity to enroll in high-technology courses. This is a pilot using contracts, not our current GI Bill procedures. There's another innovative pilot authorizing us to provide additional benefits to help student veterans complete a STEM degree, which, as we all know, sometimes takes a little longer than a traditional degree. Another section, or another one of the 34 new laws, is that we can now restore GI Bill benefits to those veterans who were harmed by abrupt school closures. We all remember those stories of ITT closing, Corinthian closing, and some of these other schools. Or increased funding for our state approving agencies. These are the state agencies that actually approve and withdraw schools for the GI Bill. They help us monitor those schools getting GI Bill funds. So as you can see, we have our work cut out for us when it comes to putting the Forever GI Bill together. The education that veterans will obtain from the Forever GI Bill will help create promising careers and fuel the dream of home ownership for many. VA realizes the critical role that local communities provide our veterans. When we look at our communities, we find veterans woven into the very fabric of them. Veterans can now be seen delivering the mail, fighting fires, protecting and serving their communities. When veterans gain economic well-being, so do the communities they live in. At a time when home ownership is at its lowest in 50 years, VA processed a record high of 740,000 VA loans for a total of $188 billion. And that's just this past year. We found that the average loan processed in 2017 was for a little over $254,000. The VA Home Loan Program gives veterans the opportunity to become more connected to their communities. The more connected a veteran becomes to their community, the more access to needed economic and health programs they will have. The lack of a required down payment, a considerable restraint from purchasing a home, these funds can now be used for an eligible member as they move into their house, removing the burden of additional debt. The VA provides assistance throughout the home buying and ownership process. Keep this in mind. A perfect example of how VA continues to improve efficiency without increasing resources is to take a look at our home guarantee service, whose volume has increased by 300%, yet we've decreased staffing by 5% through technology and innovation. We have also made considerable efforts to ensure our veterans remain in their homes after they purchase them, helping save over 97,000 veterans from foreclosure just last year alone. Assisting these in the threat of foreclosure is vital to protecting this generation's opportunity at economic well-being and is a component of helping our homeless issue. I want to take a moment to highlight the results of a study that I think you will find interesting. At the start of 2011, a veteran unemployment rate was at 9.9%. 9.9%, just 6 years ago. The most recent Bureau of Labor Statistics was released last Friday. Veteran unemployment was at 2.7%. Let me say that again, 2.7%. That's the lowest since the Bureau of Labor Statistics started releasing their statistics publicly in 2006. Many of you remember 6 years ago, veterans were being stereotyped as damaged. PTS, TBI, depression, etc. What we see today is veterans are in demand. Employers cannot get enough of those leaving the service. In fact, a recent Chamber of Commerce sponsored study of over 400 HR professionals where they were interviewed, they indicated their top 7 recruiting priorities for American businesses. Number 1 was individuals with higher learning. Number 2 were women. And number 3 were military veterans. Amazing turnaround in 6 short years. Throughout this talk, you've heard a variety of programs that are aimed at health, benefits, and end-of-life care. I believe that we are judged as a nation on how our veterans are treated and the opportunities allowed them. The well-being of our veterans reflects on the economic health of America. By investing in our veterans, we invest in the future of this country. A famous quote by JFK comes to mind when I think of veterans' well-being. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. These words echo loudly and remind me that actions speak louder than words. I truly believe that VA is always striving to be an agency of actions, not just words. On November 1st, a few short days ago, President Trump officially decreed that November is National Veterans and Military Families Month. We have a saying in VA that every day is Veterans Day. And now we get to share this philosophy with you and the rest of the nation for the entire month of November. VA looks forward to working with all of you and making every day on the calendar a day to celebrate veterans. We appreciate what you're doing in your Warrior Internship Program, your VSO Partnership Program, your Veteran Hiring Task Force, and other programs to support veterans like this. As for what you all do at CMS every day, I want to thank you for what you do, for how you do it, but most importantly, why you do it. Thank you very much. Sure.
While we have the opportunity, those of you who may have a few questions about veterans benefits, we have the expertise here to answer those questions. And I'm going to start off with one quick question, sir, if I may, about business loans for veterans that are looking to go into private business in the private sector.
There's a couple programs that's mostly run by the Small Business Administration, and they have a specific veterans program. There's also proposed legislation by several members of Congress that would turn their GI Bill benefits into perhaps an investment into small business. I've testified on that several times. Probably one of the most interesting things about this job that I have, in just the last few years, I've testified to Congress over 30 times. And it brings home the point that I tried to make in my talk, and that is veterans' well-being is really a bipartisan affair. They may disagree over, should we do more of this or more of that, but there's no disagreement that we should do more.
Any questions from the audience? Go ahead, please.
Can you distinguish between the HARP program, the Home Assistance Refinance Program, and the VA loan, I guess, help for foreclosure? Because I know there's the HARP. I didn't know the VA has a separate program, or is it just linked with those who have VA loans?
Okay. VA Home Loan Program, and most of you are veterans in here. How many people in here have a VA home loan? I will tell you, we have a system that tracks all of you, not in a weird sort of George Orwellian way, if you will. But we have a system that we will know on the 61st day of you not making a mortgage payment. We call you and we say what's going on. On the 61st day. We know this every day of the year, and so we call you and we find out. We do lose some veterans to foreclosure for very simple reasons. Could be a death of a spouse, could be divorce, could be the veteran just walks away. But in most cases, what we do is we work with the veteran and we help and we intercede and work with the banks that have done that loan to see what we can do about restructuring that loan. And we did that 97,000 times last year. Banks don't want to foreclose. That's not in their best interest. It's not in VA/our country's best interest for veterans to foreclose on their VA loan. A lot of people don't know. We don't loan money, if you will, for your house. VA loan is not come to VA and we write you a check for whatever your house is. What we do is we guarantee that loan. And if in fact that loan is foreclosed on, we pay about 25% of that expense. Right now, I'm the proud owner of about 8,000 homes that we've taken over. In other words, the bank has said, we don't want that home. It's UVA, and we have a program that in fact sells these homes that have been foreclosed on. And right now, my loan guarantee service owns about 8,000 homes, which is pretty good actually. It sounds like a lot, but used to be up to 20,000 or so. That was a long answer to your question, probably.
Hi, good morning.
Good
I just
morning.
want to first say thank you for sharing the stats that you had as far as employment rates for veterans. I also, though, have questions about the homeless rates of veterans. I noticed over the years how there have been a lot of homeless veterans out on the streets of Baltimore and other states that I've traveled in. And I feel like, that is kind of sad to have someone had fought for our country and then come home and have nowhere to live. I don't know if it's a personal thing or, if it's just the fact that they lost things along the way while serving, but I'm interested to know how that epidemic is being handled as far as homeless veterans. And then I also have another question. If you want me to hold it, I can while you address
Yeah, because
this.
I'm old and I won't remember the second question. It's a great question about homeless program. VA clearly believes that no veteran should be homeless, period. We know, though, there is a sort of functional zero because there are some people that simply, that's the lifestyle that they've chosen, and part of that could be, a problem psychologically and so on and so forth. But VA has a very aggressive homeless program. I wish I had the graph here because we have a really neat graph that shows the veteran homeless population going like that. At least once a year, senior officials from VA, myself included, go out to cities and towns in the country and we go seek out veterans. We go under, overpasses and we literally, in the middle of the night, go talk to veterans and find and see if there's something we can do and if they qualify for benefits. We also have a grant program that provides funds for veterans to get and gain apartments and those kinds of things to live in. So the short answer is we're not doing as well as we would like because zero is what we would like. But we have an entire veteran homeless program that does lots of these things. VHA, for example, has a compensated work therapy program that in fact what they do is they take homeless veterans and they bring them in and they do a psychological review of where they are. And then they begin them on a work program that in fact they'll eventually graduate into full-time employment, and there's lots of really wonderful success stories when it comes to that.
Thank you for sharing that information. And then my second question is a little more personal for me. My father is a veteran. He suffers from mental illness and chronic illnesses. And I'm finding it hard to find life insurance for him. I found out that he does not have any. We don't really have a close relationship, but found out that much and would like to help him in that way. Is there anything that you can suggest? Is there anything in place for a life insurance program or policy for a veteran?
Yes, there are several life insurance policies. You can look them up on the web, but there's Veterans Group Life Insurance. Those of you in the military, it's Servicemen's Group Life Insurance. When you leave, veterans also have a program of Veterans Group Life Insurance, and there are programs that your father may very well qualify for. It's not free. You will have to pay premiums, though.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes, ma'am. That it? Nope. Maybe one more. It'd be nice if somebody could type in out in the ethos, anybody who's listening, if they had any questions as well. Yes, sir.
Would you be able to talk about the programs that a spouse of a deceased veteran would be able to take advantage of?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Would you be able to talk about the programs that a spouse of a deceased veteran would be able to take advantage of?
Wow, that is a great question. I was saying just a few minutes ago, this is my third speaking engagement this week, and I have another one tomorrow and several next week. I went to one last night, and we talked about spouse employment. VA, if you will, does not have a quote spouse program, but we do have public-private partnerships with numerous organizations that do in fact have spouse programs, and it's becoming the next big thing, if you will. This is probably going to come out wrong, but Veteran unemployment now is at 2.7%, and that's a big deal, and we should all celebrate that. Now we're working on things like veteran underemployment, and that's a big issue of making sure that veterans are achieving their economic well-being in a job that is suitable to maintain that living lifestyle. DOD in many cases is doing a lot of the spouse employment, and we work with various companies. I'll give you a classic example. Hilton. We work very closely with Hilton, and they hire lots of spouses, and they do that because the other spouse that's in the service, they get moved around. Well, Hilton has hotels all over the country. And so it's a perfect opportunity for spouses to take advantage of that program of hiring, because when their spouse gets change of order to somewhere, they very likely will have a Hilton pretty close by. And so we're looking at a lot of those kinds of things. As well, for example, just within the VA, we're always looking towards spouse programs. We have what they call the Transition Assistance Program, which is for service members getting out of the service. There's a week-long transition program. We hire a lot of spouses to do the instruction of that program, particularly spouses that are overseas, because that way when they come back and they're stationed at a base back, or their spouse is stationed at a base back here, we simply can hire them as contractors to be able to do that training. So spouse employment is very much a big deal. I was at I gave both a speech and attended a gala at the Chamber of Commerce, Hire Our Heroes, and they in fact now have established this year a spouse employment award. They give out to large, medium, and small companies for their programs to hire military spouses and or veteran spouses. I don't know if that answered your question or not. Anybody else? Yes, sir. I'm probably driving the net people crazy by walking around, but yes, sir.
All right, so you mentioned the burial benefits portion of the VA program through the National Cemetery Administration for pre-eligibility. What did you mean by that? Because they don't allow you to do any reservations. So when you said pre-eligibility, what did you mean by pre-eligibility?
I'm sorry, I got bad.
Pre-eligibility, you mentioned for burial benefits for veterans and their family members. What did you mean by
cemetery
pre-eligibility?
benefits?
Yes, for your burial benefits for the
burial
cemetery,
benefits,
the
what
National
we do?
Cemetery Administration, because they don't have any. You can't make reservations for burial. It's only at the time of need.
Right.
That's policy through the NCA. So, what did you mean by pre-eligibility?
There are some veterans, to be brutally frank, don't qualify for VA burial benefits, and some do. I'll give you a classic example. My brother lives down in Florida. He had a dear friend that lived a couple houses down who was a veteran, and he suddenly passed, and they came to him. My brother's a veteran, and then they knew his brother worked at VA and said, hey man, what can you do? Well, you have to be able to find things like your DD-214 and to be signed up. And if you can imagine, any of us whose parents are still living and your dad or mother was a veteran and they pass, the first thing you're going to is, well, where's their DD-214 and how do I find that? And so the point of this program is to get you pre-eligible. So in other words, when that time comes, you're not running around going through drawers and boxes and so on, or trying to find that loved one's DD-214 that shows their proof of service. All of that's done. You're right, you can't make a reservation. You can't say, I want that plot's reserved for me. But you can get a eligibility done So when in fact that time comes, it's really seamless. I guess I didn't answer your question.
No, because my dad earlier this year passed away. I tried to get him, I tried to get eligibility established prior to his passing, and they told me that I couldn't. I could only do it at the time of need, and that was at the National Cemetery Scheduling Office. I actually used to work for the National Cemetery Administration at the Baltimore National Cemetery Scheduling Services, and I knew all of the policies and procedures. As a matter of fact, the National Cemetery Administration website right now says that they are no longer doing pre-eligibility. So again, that is some information that is either being miscommunicated or something is not
My
being
card's
correct.
over on the table. Why don't you send me a note now?
Yes, sir.
I'll find out for you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
How you doing, sir? I have a question. So you said that veterans are being employed approximately about 27%. I believe that's what you said.
There's a veteran unemployment rate is 2.7%.
So how is the VA doing a checks and balances for veterans who are coming up off the street and trying to get into the government position? And I'll give you a good example. I have a really good buddy of mine. He's 30% disabled veteran. The guy teaches at the university level IT security. He has a PhD in IT security, but yet he has been trying for many years. I've been here for 4 years, and I've known him for 4 years, and he has tried over and over and over again to get a government job, and he hasn't received not one interview. The guy is highly, highly qualified. So how is the VA doing checks and balances on employees or government employers to give them a fair shake, to come into the government service?
The short answer is that is an agency issue specifically. I know CMS has a veteran employment program, and everybody's seen that you get the 5 points or the 10 points and so on and so forth. It's a huge challenge in many different ways. What a lot of people mistake is that I'm a veteran and I'm entitled to have that job. And they're entitled to get their 5-point advantage, their 10-point advantage, and from that point on, it's an HR process to determine who gets on the cert, who doesn't get on the cert, or who gets interviewed and who does not get interviewed. I would strongly suggest that your friend, perhaps through the HR department here, at least at a minimum set up an appointment and say, what am I doing wrong here? Because if I'm highly qualified, I have a PhD, I teach this stuff, and somehow I'm not getting on the list just to be interviewed, there's a mismatch there somehow.
He's making the list. He's on the list. But not a single time has anybody in the government ever called him just for an interview. The point is, I know the guy is very highly qualified. I'm not in a position to interview or hire, at least not here. I think it's something in the system is wrong if they're not giving a fair shake to, and I'm just using this guy as an example. I've seen this with other vets as well.
And I've seen it with other vets as well too, and it's a huge challenge. OPM has the lead on that, not VA, but it's also part of the veterans program at each agency on how they handle, their hiring of veterans.
We have 2 minutes left, sir.
Okay.
I just wanted to take a minute to thank you on behalf
Oh,
of CMS
you're welcome.
for making the trip out here to speak to us today. And I think we owe him one more round of applause for coming. The Undersecretary has been kind enough to also allow me to send out his email. So those of you who have questions, maybe out that are watching on YouTube right now that weren't able to get your question out, I'll send that link out and you can ask the Undersecretary directly. But again, I want to thank you all for your support, for coming out today. And I wish, on behalf of the VAC, I wish you and all of your family members a safe and happy Veterans Day. Thank you again for coming. This concludes our program for the day.